They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and I think gardeners really follow that old saying because they have to come up with clever ideas to use in their gardens for special situations. So to address that, for the Tulsa County Fair this year, we had a special contest called the Garden Gadget Contest, and we wanted to show you viewers across Oklahoma what some of our Tulsa area gardeners came up with for neat ideas for use in your own garden. And here's the winner this year, Ray. This was by Cliff Littler up in Oologah. If you've ever had a duster that you load a pesticide dust into and you feel like you need a third hand, here's an idea. He built a little rack for it. There's a hole here where you can hang it on the wall, and above that is a funnel. And when you leave the hole of the duster open, you can have your hands free with this hanging on the wall to put your pesticide in. Mr. Littler also attached a rod for tamping the pesticide down into the duster. And down below here, he has a handy rack to hold the rest of the dusting parts. And so you keep your hands free, and it's a safer way to apply pesticides. So we thought that was a very clever idea.
I like that idea, Sue, because I've never had a duster that had a large enough hole to really put the dust in out of the can or the bag without the dust going everywhere. That's a real neat idea.
That's a real safe idea, too.
I've noticed Mr. Littler had a lot of things entered in the show. I'm a big bluebird fan. I'm interested in his bluebird house.
Okay, well,
tell me about it.
Mr. Littler and his neighbor both observed bluebirds for the wildlife department up in Oologah, around Lake Oologah, and they needed an easy way to check the houses and see how the babies were doing without disturbing the bluebirds. So in his bluebird house, he has a little nail on the side, and it's hinged so you can check inside and see how the birds are doing. Now there's a little block here that the nail goes into, and he said since you're out in the grass and weeds usually checking these, he left a hole for an extra nail in case you drop the one you have. Then, when it's time to clean out the bird house, or if you want to leave a little bit of ventilation or prevent sparrows from entering, there's another hole in the side that allows the front hinge to come up. And one other modification Mr. Littler told me about that is not in all bluebird house plans is in the block of wood on the bottom, instead of poking holes in it for ventilation, he just cut off the sides and rounded them off. And he said that makes it a little simpler product to make.
You know, bluebirds are a nice addition to the garden, and this really could attract them, I could see.
Oh, it really could. In fact, one tip Mr. Littler gave us is that the best color to paint them is white with a blue roof.
Good. Yeah. He has another gadget there, and that I know is something I want to try at home because I face a problem like that oftentimes myself.
Well, that's right. Those of you who have line-type weed trimmers, very often you run out of line and you have to go buy a new spool at the store.
And they are expensive.
They are. And a cheaper way to go is to buy the line in bulk at a lawn and garden supply house and rewind your own spool. And very often that is cumbersome to do by hand. Mr. Littler built himself a third hand for this task too. Many of you have cordless electric screwdrivers at home, and he just made a hole in this board, and that slips down in there when it's not on the charger, and he wants to rewind his spool. He stores the bit to the screwdriver over in a hole over here. When he wants to rewind the spool, he just mounts this on there, and he gives it a twist. There's a little nail here to hold it. Gives it a twist, and it rewinds it. And one tip he gave me is that you want to rewind it fairly loosely, Ray. He said if you rewind it real tight and the string is all lined up very neatly, when you go to bump the trimmer to let your line out, he said very often it will twist up on itself. And he said it's better to have a messy spool and it will unwind more easily, a little loose, messy spool. But he said it's easier to wind it with this gadget.
Maybe that's what happens to me because my line's always getting twisted and breaking off. I bet I wind it too tight.
That could be. So there's another tip.
He has some other things that I think he did enter, but just kind of wanted to show it.
Right, just for fun. This idea, how often have we shown you on a melon, if you're growing melons on a trellis, to put a little sling under them? And a lot of times we've shown to put that right under the melon. Mr. Littler said he has trouble sometimes telling when the melons are ripe. And so he attaches a string up above where the melon is hanging and just puts this bag loosely just under it. And he said when it's perfectly ripe, it will drop down into the hammock.
That's a neat idea.
That's it.
Tell me, what is a sit and weed? This looks to me like something for the song of the lazy gardener.
I think so. This was entered by Mary Lee Gullickson, and she also lives in Tulsa. And she came up with the idea when her 7-year-old was given a sled for Christmas, a little wooden sled. And you know how often kids get to use sleds in Oklahoma. It doesn't snow very much. And so when her daughter outgrew it, she took it out in the garden and started sitting on it to weed and stored all of her gardening supplies underneath. And she has started making these. And you can see it's a very simple plan with just some wood, and she's put some stain on it. And she said the flat bottom doesn't bog down like a cart with wheels might in a wet garden. And she put a dowel rod across the top so she can just pick it up and move it. And she said she sits on that, and it saves stooping and kneeling, saves her back.
Good idea. Someone entered, it looks to me like a plant protector.
Right. This was entered by an older gentleman in Tulsa who felt that he didn't want to use plastic milk jugs because they're not biodegradable. So he took 2 old coat hangers and made these rods to stick down into the side of a box. And they hold the box over his tomato plants in the spring. The rods go down in the soil, and that way they don't fall over in the wind. And I asked him, well, wouldn't it be simpler just to put a brick on top of the box? He said, well, it would, but in the spring we get drenching rains and the brick might collapse the box. So
good idea.
Nice and simple.
And you can't have a garden gadget contest without someone using some 2-liter pop bottles.
That's exactly right.
And that's what Kathy Steed, Tulsa, did.
Right. This is her automatic sub-irrigation system using a pop bottle. And Kathy has planted her house plant in the top of this pop bottle, and she's left the cap on, but she's put 2 holes in the bottom. And down in this decorative pot that she used just for display, she's put the bottom of a pop bottle, and that's her reservoir for water. And she keeps that filled, and this rests just about a 1/4 inch above the bottom of that, and it automatically absorbs water. And see, as you can see from the roots, she's getting good, healthy growth.
Real good.
She doesn't have to water from the top, and there's no mess.
That'd be a good way to do African violets because
It sure would.
they respond well to sub-irrigation like that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's some other interesting things over here, Sue. I kind of like this. It looks like it had a blue ribbon winner.
Yeah, this is one of the judges' favorites, and the reason for that is because it's a simple idea that most gardeners can do. How often are you raking up leaves in the fall, and you need an extra hand to scoop the leaves up into the plastic bag or into your compost bin? And this was entered by Kent Laughlin of Tulsa, and what he did is he just took a washer between these 2 rake handles and used a screw and some nuts, hex nuts, and made himself what he calls a rake tong. And the idea is that you just pick up your leaves and then dump them elsewhere, and it saves bending over.
I'm for saving bending over.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that this looks like someone might be trying to hang their laundry on the...
Well, you might wonder. This is called a bird detour. Betty Patterson, who is in fact one of our master gardeners in Tulsa, came up with this idea. And what she's done is taken just some nylon fabric, and I'll just take this off and show it to you. She has sewn it onto a piece of elastic and put a little S-hook on the end. And what she does is she wraps this around her tomato cages, and as it blows in the wind, it scares the birds. She said it works very, very well. She said in the spring, it shades the plants slightly and buffers the wind a little bit when the plants are just getting started.
I bet it would give you some protection against sun scald later in the summer also.
I think so, yeah.
That's a neat idea.
A real good idea.
Neat idea.
The bird detour.
What do we have here from Sharon Shader?
Yes,
in Tulsa. Is that a fruit picker?
Yeah. You've seen fruit pickers probably in garden supply catalogs, and Sharon came up with this idea as a quick and easy way to make one yourself. And this is just a wooden clothes rod. You could probably buy at a hardware store. And on top, she's mounted a juice can and cut a V, and you can just go up into your trees and catch that on the stem where the fruit attaches to the tree, and it plops down in there. And as an extra caution, she's stuffed the bottom with some paper towels for a cushion.
That'd be important if the peaches were ripe or the pears were real ripe.
It sure would. So it's a quick, easy idea.
And I believe, was this just a display of someone's gadget there?
It was too large a gadget to bring in, but Mr. Bill Jarrett in Tulsa wanted to enter this idea, and we thought it was a very worthy idea. He has trouble with birds attacking his fruit on his fruit trees. And so Mr. Jarrett is fairly handy with electrical things. So he got the idea of mounting an electric motor on a pole that is cemented down into a tire. And next to that electric motor, coming out of it, he has 2 poles that extend out beyond it. And at the end of each pole is an inflatable snake. And he has this on a timer, so it comes on when the sun comes up, goes off at night. And all day long, those snakes revolve around in the air. They flail around near these fruit trees, and he said he has no blue jay problems. His trees are free of bird trouble. His next adaptation is he's taken a garage door opener and tried to run a snake on a pulley and run it up and down the rows. And he said he hasn't quite perfected that idea yet, but maybe y'all could give Mr. Jarrett some suggestions on how to make it work even better.
If I saw a snake moving that fast, I would be scared whether there was a blue jay or not. I think that's a neat idea also, because we do know that those scare tactics work, particularly if you keep them moving around
That's
the orchard.
right. In fact, he told me that he moves those around from time to time.
This is kind of interesting looking also. I don't, it's plant dibble. Stanley Curry.
Stanley Curry made this. And the reason it won a blue ribbon is that it's such a simple idea, but it saves a lot of effort if you're trying to do some precision planting in the garden. In horticulture, we've used dibbles in the greenhouse for years to mark little seed rows, and he adapted this for the garden. As you can see, it's just made out of scrap lumber, and these little tines are spaced 6 inches apart. And you could drag it over the top of a raised bed and have your rows 6 inches apart for putting carrots in, or you could run it the length of the row and have a hole marked for where each seed goes if you want them spaced 6 inches apart.
Or if you're setting transplants like ground covers or something, you could probably mark it very easily.
That's right. Get a very quick, easy grid.
Again, that's a good back saver.
Yeah. All these, I think, are real good ideas for saving labor.
These last 2 are from the same person, Rick Nelson. One says weed beater. The other one says organic weed beater. Tell me what the difference is.
Well, this one is an adaptation of what people call the chemical hoe, and we've shown how to use those on Oklahoma gardening, where you dip the wick in Roundup herbicide. Well, he came up with a little easier idea. If you keep your chemical in this small container, and you can wet the wick, put your container back up here, and then run this roller across there like a paint roller, and then let the roller touch the plants.
Gee, that's a neat idea.
It saves wasting the herbicide. Some of those, you pour it down the tube and you never know if you've used it all. So this is a very economical way to use some more expensive weed killers.
Another thing too, on those that you pour down the tube, if you have the wick there, it either continues to drip out the wick, or you have to turn it upside down, and then if you have a leak, it can really be messy. So that's a neat idea there. And this one then is mechanical.
Yes.
It looks like.
It's for taking out dandelions or even crabgrass in the garden. It's another back saver. And this is the fork off the dandelion weeder, and he's put that up inside a piece of PVC pipe with a nut and bolt to hold it in place. And Rick suggests that you first get that down and sort of get hold of the root.
And then squeeze this down and lift it out.
And just lift it out.
It's good. He's got this pulley on a spring with a piece of nylon cord that's probably off of his weed trimmer. Really neat idea. That's
good and strong, and either one would be useful in the garden. And we'd like to thank everyone who entered our gadget contest. We had 28 entrants this year, hoping for more next year, but 250 people came to watch it. And we know that the rest of you around Tulsa might want to see what the top winners were. So you may want to try this idea in your own community. I'm sure there's some gardeners where you live who've come up with equally interesting ideas.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.